It's Zach Eady with Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I'm your host, Joe Jackson. Joining me, as always, is Craig Bowers from the friendly confines of Mackey Arena. Purdue opens up their season, gets a 90-73 win over Texas A&M Corpus Christi, a game that was a lot closer than what the final score indicated. I think the last 5-6 minutes, Purdue, Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Renz specifically, kind of were just like, yeah, we're the better team. Like, we're not losing this. There's a lot to talk about, I think, from this game. Finally got some action that is meaningful, so excited about that. Sorry if you heard that in the background. I don't know if my mic muted that or not, but yeah, excited to just talk through everything. If you're in here, please like and subscribe. Helps us out a ton, and we're gonna have a pretty fun show, I think. Craig, I'll throw it to you. Purdue wins 90-73. What's kind of just your big takeaways from this game?
I guess my big takeaway is it's a team that, even though there's a lot of experience returning, obviously Braden Smith, TKR, Fletcher Lawyer, returning as starters off of that national championship or national runner-up run. At the same time, there's a lot of youth and inexperience, and I think when we did the preview show, Joe, we talked about the fact that it was going to just take some time for these young guys to get out there and play in real minutes, and not just that, but for everybody else to play around them. It takes a little while to figure out where Daniel Jacobson wants to catch that pass, how fast he can throw it to him versus Berg, versus Burgess, versus everybody else. The youth showed tonight, and in the end, they were able to pull away. But it's there, right? There's no escaping the fact that there are guys that need reps in real game situations, and it's going to be a little bit while before this looks like a finished product in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like, we'll dive into it. Turnovers have to be better. I'm still concerned, and we saw it in the second half of like, hey, what happens when Purdue doesn't hit these tough shots? First half, lights out. It was great. Second half, it wasn't. And now what exactly goes from there? How do you kind of figure out what you want to do from there, and how are you able to score the ball, be efficient, things like that? So I think it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be some learning. It's going to be some just pure time. This is also a great test of a matchup. Like, Texas A&M Corpus Christi is by no means, like, in the grand scheme, a good team. They are not on Purdue's level. They do things that give Purdue issues, and that's a great way to start the year, of having that first test. Jakari and CJ get their first taste of really being pressured full court. How does that kind of look? We get the rotation of centers once again, have some guys off the bench, specifically Colvin, come in, knock down some shots. So I think there's a lot just all over. It's good to see the big three just kind of do what they needed to do. Obviously, there are things they can even tighten up and will tighten up, but we can kind of just dive straight into it. Do we want to start with players? And if so, who do you want to start with?
Why don't we start with the stats and kind of roll through some of the team stuff and talk about that?
All right, let's do it. So Purdue stats up on the page, and that is the wrong one. So maybe I did not get the right stats up. That's a little awkward on my part. Yeah, it's going to take a second to get those up. My bad on that. Craig, if you have them still, you can go ahead and upload them.
I do not. Okay. You go ahead and grab them.
That. Go ahead, talk about TKR today. I can read off his stats: 15 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 turnovers, a block, and a steal in 33 minutes. What did you kind of see from him from this game that you liked in?
I thought there certainly were some positives, right? There were some times he scored off some short rolls. Times he kind of put his guy in a blender with the spin move, that sort of thing. Got there. Obviously was really active on the glass from a rebounding standpoint. I thought there were early on in the game, especially, I thought a lot of guys were just missing kind of some bunnies in the paint. And I don't know if that was first game of the year stuff. TKR really shouldn't be nervous or have the jitters or anything like that at this point for as much time as he's played. But obviously, just getting out here and playing that first game and kind of working through it. Hit one really nice three. Obviously, the next two didn't go down for him, or two of the three didn't go down for him tonight. But I think he at least shows that he's a threat from that range. I guess the one area is obviously the turnovers. That was more concerning. There were some times they started doubling him at some point in this game, and when they did that, I thought there were some times where he maybe rushed in his decision. The problem is, I guess for me, like him relative to Zach in that situation, right? He doesn't have the same size to be able to kind of turn and face cross court and be able to make that pass. He did a couple of times. I think he was singled at that point. I don't think he was getting doubled when he did that. So it's going to be real interesting to me to see when he does get doubled, how he's going to react to it. I thought tonight was a pretty tough defensive matchup for him. Just that Clark, when he was on Clark, or depending on who it was, he was on some guys that have relatively similar height, not near as much weight and bulk as what TKR has, but some guys that could kind of face up and try to attack off the dribble. Obviously, he's going to see some fours like that throughout the year. Thought he held up okay, but could have been better. It's a harder task when you don't have Zach standing behind you. So it's going to be interesting to see that play out as the year progresses too.
Yes. Okay. So I agree with a lot that you said. I finally do have the stats up. Hopefully they're the right ones. This would be awkward if I had once again missed them, but no, these are the correct ones. So some team stats right here that we look at for both sides. Obviously, Purdue wins 92-73. Texas A&M Corpus Christi only 6-19 from three. Purdue 11-26. Obviously, you have to talk about the turnovers. 16 for Purdue, 9 for Texas A&M Corpus Christi. 19 points off turnovers for Texas A&M Corpus Christi as well. Only 6 for Purdue. The rebounding eventually swung in Purdue's favor, winning both defensive and offensive. But for a while, that was a lot closer than what it ended up being. Purdue gets a few more second chance points. Purdue shoots 11 of 26 from three. I think let's just dive. You talked about it a bit with TKR and that. Let's just dive into the turnovers because I think that's probably question 1B. Question 1A is probably the interior defense. But for you, as you look at this game and looking back, Braden with 6 turnovers, TKR with 4, 16 as a team, is it just a combination of Corpus Christi plays a style that leads to more turnovers plus Purdue having a lot of new players, and this will in time just kind of not be more of a non-issue? Or is this something that you think could be more of a long-term issue?
I don't really see it as a long-term issue. Obviously, we talked about in the preview. This Corpus Christi team last year forced over 8 steals a game. They ranked in the top 20 in steals created last year. They brought a lot of pieces back from that team. So they've played as a defensive unit together for a long time. They like to run people out in waves so nobody gets tired and really pressure the ball. I really feel like it's just guys that haven't played together yet and learning how to play off each other. I guess the concerning part about that, right, is out of those 16 turnovers, the fact that 10 of those come from, 2 of kind of your leaders on this team between Braden Smith and TKR. So that's a little concerning to me. I still think some of that is just some of the guys who hadn't got a lot of run. We saw times where Braden kind of got trapped and it seemed like Jakari didn't know to come to him or CJ didn't know to come to him. Whoever was out there, you know what I mean? So I think just as time goes on, I think they're going to get much more comfortable with each other. And I don't see the turnover issue being a major thing because most of the turnovers came from 2 guys that are leaders and returners that really should be able to take care of the ball better.
And I think the other thing specifically with like Braden is like he still had 15 assists. And so when you're asked to do that much and facilitate that much, the turnovers are just going to come. I still think he forced a bit, and I think he will work on those and be better. Like it's not him having 15 assists doesn't completely, get rid of the fact that he had 6 turnovers also. But you saw a few times he just was expecting guys to be either a step faster or a step, being able to get to some of these passes, and they weren't. You also the one play that stands out to me, and I don't even think it resulted in a turnover specifically, was with Texas A&M Corpus Christi hedging, so that means whoever is defending the big setting the screen, he's up trying to push Braden Smith away with the ball, right? Pushing towards half court. With Zach Edey last year, if Braden comes off that, Edey's immediately flipping and re-screening. And it is just on, like, it was just the quickest way to beat that defense. Now Braden Smith's coming to really an open area. I remember the one specifically, he wanted that from Jacobson immediately, and it took Jacobson like 4 seconds to get there. And those are just the learning pains that are going to come when you, I mean, Purdue's going to have at minimum probably 3 freshmen in their rotation all season long, with the potential for 4. Like, some of those things are just going to come with, you know, being young. Some of it also is like, specifically with the bigs, I think everybody obviously realizes like, hey, they aren't Zach Edey. We don't need to expect Zach Edey. But it's also hard. Like, I was thinking through the last 4 years of Purdue bigs has been Travion near All-American with Edey as a freshman, surprising. They split sophomore year where both are like really, really good in 20 minutes. And then Zach Edey, 2-time National Player of the Year the following 2 years. Like, it's been elite big play for 4 years. And with, I mean, even Berg, I know he's a sophomore, but like, he hasn't had meaningful minutes. These is going to be a lot of learning and stuff that we need to see, right? It's less concerning game 1. It's more concerning if we're still talking about this in game 15. And that's where I think is kind of where I'm at. Is game 1, things can be fixed. Game 15, game 20, then it's like, hey, what exactly is going on here? So I think from here, we got to probably let's just talk about the interior defense off top. Texas A&M Corpus Christi, they shoot 23 of their 67 shots at the rim, which is, 36% or something like that. I'll pull up exact stats to see where that ranks comparatively, but they're allowing a lot of shots at the rim. Some of it's in transition. Some of it is, just off of things like that. Again, being able to break down the defense and not have a great rim protector. Was there anybody at the 5 spot that stood out to you as like, hey, I liked what he did specifically being able to protect the rim and protect the paint today?
I mean, not for the stretch of the whole game. No. I mean, the answer is just no. But I did think that Jacobson, down the stretch especially, played much better in that regard. He got a block, and then finally, one of the things we talked about watching him over the summer in the USA Under-19 team was he tended to swing down a lot and foul a lot because he wouldn't wall up. And one of the plays right down there toward the end, somebody drives into him and he just walls up really nice. And then there was a secondary defender there as well. Don't think it was an actual block, but leads to a very badly missed shot. And then they take off in transition from there. So I thought he played much, much better down the stretch. But in terms of a whole game, no. I thought there were too many times where people were able to get around the big. A lot of times they went up and under and used the other side of the rim because, they're not sealing off to the baseline completely or whatever there. So I thought Berg was more physical than what Jacobson was. Sometimes some guys just went straight into Jacobson as well. I remember at one point in there, Clark takes him kind of on a spin move and just torches him and gets to the basket. Thought Berg was more physical about it, but at the same time, he didn't necessarily recover great, off of that high pick and roll either. So I don't know what your thoughts were, but is there a promise for it to get better throughout the year and look way better than it did tonight? Yes, I think so. Is it ever going to be as good as Zach standing in the middle last year? No. But I think there's hope for it to be much better before the year's over. Last
year, Purdue allowed 24% of shots at the rim. And what did I say this year? Or this game was like 36%. Probably close. It's probably a little below D1 average if I were to guess off the top of my head, but still very sizable difference. You saw flashes from Jacobson, especially in that second half, but the first half, like, I thought he was a step slow protecting the rim. And again, it's just going to be reps. It's going to be time. I think I would say the same thing about Berg. I don't know if I would say Berg just got meaningful enough minutes to him and First both to really say one way or the other. I think there was both like individual plays that I liked from him, but like I think it's cemented to me why, at least for now, Jacobson is starting. I think he just has the most upside. I also think like something that kind of popped into my head today of like when you do like playing TK at the 4, it does allow Jacobson to sit in the paint a little bit more because like if there's somebody else cutting or Jacobson needs to kind of help onto the ball, onto the driver who's coming into the paint, TKR can now be the one that switches onto the opposing big, and you're not still giving up like a huge mismatch, right? Where if it's Heidi, like you are going to be giving up that. And so that thing popped out of like, okay, TKR is going to have to be really good on his ability to help Jacobson or Berg or whoever. It's also going to be, it is going to be more by team. I think with 2 minutes left, I might actually have this noted. 3 minutes and 20 seconds left. There's a baseline drive. Jacobson's probably a half step late rotating to the rim, but Brain's the one that comes over from the weak side corner. He's the one that walls up. I don't know if he got credited with a block, but he was absolutely the reason why that shot did not go in at the rim. So there's going to be more of a team aspect to it rather than just let Zach Edey be one of the best defenders in the country. It also means, in transition to the other side of the defense, is like Purdue guards have to be good defensively. We saw the individual plays from Harris and CJ Cox. Harris was the one that got more run today. I think from both of them, though, you saw moments where it's like, hey, you just completely missed a rotation or things like that. They're the, I think, where is it at? I have a comment starred somewhere. There it is. Salty B says, each year Purdue has that hustle guy that creates more possession, gets lost balls and rebounds. Who's that guy? Do we have one? Harris and Cox, I would say, are both. Like, potentially that guy. You saw it today. The theme, though, time, possessions, improvements, like those two also needed. As great as they were on ball defensively, there's a lot to improve elsewhere. I think Braden and Lawyer, for them, the key is just being in the right spot. There's going to be times that they're going to be, outmatched physically, and Purdue just kind of has to live with those. But like on that low rotation, if Braden can be in the right spots, that's going to be just crazy, crazy important for him. But yeah, navigating screens, you saw it both from Harrison Cox. Colvin's going to be tasked with it at times, especially on a game like today when he's going to get a bunch of minutes because he's hitting shots. He's going to be kind of the guy taking the lead ball handler at times too. So I think there's upside. You saw some plays, but just pretty much like most of the roster, you also saw like, hey, this is a little bit shaky at this moment.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think with this team, the current iteration of this team, that our perimeter defense has to be, I don't know that it can ever be elite, right? In terms of elite perimeter defensive teams that you think of, but it has to be really, really good. And I think CJ and Jakari right now are both pretty good, just in the open court one-on-one. Jakari sometimes to me still just like needs to learn when to pick and choose to be overly aggressive, because there'll be sometimes he'll do it and then the offensive player will get him on his hip, and you saw him get taken to the paint several times with that. But yeah, it's more to me just how they navigate screens to be able to keep their guy in front of them, not let him get to the rim as easily or come around and chip him, being able to know those rotations. I saw a couple times where they were flying out late on a three-point attempt, and this team's not a very good three-point shooting team. If that's the case against some other teams, I'm going to get burnt. So I like exactly like you said, I just think it's a matter of time with those two. They're too good defensively in the open court, mano-y-mano. I think it's going to come. And I think the biggest thing here, Joe, to me, as we hear people talk about rotations and those sort of things, is those are the two that have the chance to be elite perimeter defenders. And Painter's got to let them play through mistakes right now and got to let them play to the point where they're comfortable, because if those two don't become those guys, we really don't have it, right? In my mind.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I don't think Colvin's quite that. I think he can be a good defender, but I don't think the ceiling for Harris and Cox are both, a lot higher. And Braden and Fletch, nobody's going to call them elite perimeter defenders. Heidi maybe has that to him, but we'll talk about Heidi more in a minute. But yeah, like I think this is going to be the theme for probably a while, is you maybe have one big on a given night look pretty good and have a good stat line. Today was Jacobson, 13.7 rebounds, 3 blocks, only 1 turnover, 4 or 6 from the field, 5 or 7 from the free throw line, which is big also. But you're going to see this platoon, and there's going to be moments from every guy, and then there's also going to be moments where it's like, yeah, that's why that guy doesn't play 30 minutes a game. And hopefully come January, there's more of a definitive role. Yeah, I guess I got nothing really else. Like Burgess played 5 minutes, First played 2. I thought First was good in his 2 minutes, and we thought this would be more of a first game, but Jacobson and Berg both provide more of that pure rim protection. Burgess officially does not redshirt. So that is a big thing that comes from his 5 minutes. Nothing really stood out to me there, good or bad. Just he played his 5 minutes and kind of moved on. Anything, I guess, anything on those two, or if not, let's just jump to kind of some of the guards.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about Burgess is I thought it was kind of hard. Obviously, only played 5 minutes, so it's kind of hard to get a good read anyway. But I thought the lineup that he was in with made it a little bit hard to really tell too much one way or another. I think he was Cam at the 4 when he was at the 5 the entire time.
Yep.
Yeah. And there was like just a moment there where he was in actually at the 4, right?
It was like for a free throw attempt, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Because we were like, oh, he's going to play the 4. So I think it makes it hard to really evaluate where he's at. So I don't think he's ahead of Jacobson by any means, especially not from what we've seen or anything like that. I think Jacobson is the best offensive option at this point. He just looks the most fluid. He looks the most coordinated with his hands catching those alley-oops. He's good at the free throw line. He brings the opportunity to at least shoot from 3. He missed his one he took tonight, but looked good coming off of his hand. But I'd like to see – it would be interesting to me. I shouldn't say I'd like to see. It would be interesting for me to see some Burgess moments with the bulk of the starting lineup still out there.
Yeah, and I'm curious if it is just that was how the rotation fell, or if that was on purpose. Second half played more with the starters, just Heidi at the 4 instead of TKR, and that's probably the pairing that we're curious about. For the rotation chart on the screen for anybody that's watching on YouTube, which if you are, please like and subscribe. Any colored box, that means that player played that minute. You can see the positions down at the bottom. Also, at Purdue margin, just underneath the last name, that's what that lineup was, plus minus in their minutes in that stint. The closing lineup was the starting lineup, and that was Smith, Harris, Lawyer, TKR, and Jacobson. I think for right now, obviously Smith, Lawyer, TKR, they're locked into that. Harris probably has, for now, I would say, like the best chance of being in that lineup, just because I think he can provide a little bit more physically defensively. But CJ Cox, Miles Colvin, 2 guys absolutely can be in that lineup. And then we already talked about the big. I think Jacobson looked the best today, so he gets it. But it could be really one of any of the 4 guys down the stretch. Just kind of thinking through, like, I don't really have anything else for the bigs. It's just going to be a lot of time. I guess the one thing is, like, we don't see TKR at the 5 again. I don't know if/when we will, because just with how he hasn't played that yet. David Jenkins says Paint must be seeing something with Burgess in practice to burn a red shirt with 4 minutes in that first game. I'll give my quick thought. I assume it's more of a long-term, like, hey, this guy could give 20 minutes in January. But Craig, I know you've been higher on him, so what are kind of your thoughts on it?
Yeah, and obviously I've got to see some stuff at practice, and those that have seen really impressive minutes out of him. He looks to me to be maybe the furthest behind from a conditioning standpoint right now. We noticed in the exhibition game the other day, he kind of got winded a little bit quicker than everybody else out there. So I don't know if he's still trying to work himself into that condition. But there's 2 ways of looking at that statement to me. One is he either sees something that really jumps out to Painter that says he might be able to separate from some other guys on the roster when we hit Big Ten play in January, the real wave of Big Ten play, right? Yeah. Or it may just be that he hasn't seen enough separation from anybody else yet. So you're just holding all your cards so that you have the best chance of somebody developing by the time we hit January.
Yep, 100% agree there. So we've spent 24 minutes or so talking through some of the bigs, some of the defensive issues. Purdue put up 90 points, 1.25 points per possession. Braden Smith, 12 points, 8 rebounds, 15 assists, 6 turnovers, 2 steals in 35 minutes of play. This was a game where I think you still saw Braden tinkering kind of and how he's going to play and how he wants to attack defenses and how he's going to be able to trust his teammates in certain spots. It's also, you just saw Braden Smith picking apart the defense at various points. It didn't matter that the team was, Texas A&M Corpus Christi was in a very hard hedge. Braden Smith said, fine, I have shooters all around me. I'm just going to draw you out, and you're either going to step in and roll onto a roller of 7'4" Jacobson, and I'm going to kick it out to 3, or you're not, and then I'm just going to throw it at the rim for the 7'4" guy to go get it. TKR is also really, really good at the short roll and just their kind of connection. I think he had the one turnover, which maybe was a kick ball, but maybe wasn't called it. You saw just kind of his ability to quickly, against that hedge, get TKR the ball quickly, let him operate with room in 15 minutes. I think there was, obviously the stat line shows it. There's a ton of like about Braden Smith, and like, hey, not bad for a guy that supposedly Zach Edey made, you know?
Yeah, and he finishes 1 assist shy of the single game record, which he set last January with 16 assists in a game, if Sports Reference is correct, which they almost always are. So that's certainly impressive, right? And those who we're talking in the offseason that he wasn't going to get some of those Big Ten and Purdue assist records. That's not looking like a real likely storyline as he goes out and puts out 15 a night. Obviously, he pressed, right? In some of those situations, there were some passes that just shouldn't have been made. And maybe, to a degree, some of that was trying to make those passes to new guys in their first game at Mackey. But as good as he was from a total standpoint, only being 2 rebounds away from a triple-double, I think he's got to figure out how to be a little bit better with this group. So we don't end up in a 6 turnover situation, but an absolute Herculean effort by him still, especially down the stretch. From your standpoint, Joe, I mean, the last 4.5, 5 minutes of that game, Purdue started getting into the paint anytime they wanted. Lawyer got into the paint, and Smith got into the paint, and he was able then to get those alley-oops to Jacobson at that point, when really most of the entire game they weren't doing a good job of that. What changed?
I think you saw Corpus Christi a little bit sell out on the 3, which was surprising since Purdue wasn't shooting well in the second half. I think you also just saw Braden almost just going, like, it feels oversimplification, but he almost just went into a mode of like, okay, I'm like kind of done messing around and just going to kind of take this over, and they aren't better than me type thing. And that's exactly what you want to see from Braden. Yeah, he just got more comfortable feeling out the hedge, understanding, okay, this is how I need to attack downhill. I think you saw a little bit more of the rescreen action, like I talked about, where they set the screen, immediately flip it and rescreen. You also saw, I think, Purdue push the pace at least at certain times a little bit. And so now Corpus Christi wasn't able to get into a lot of their, set defense that they wanted to. Now Braden Smith's getting in the open a little bit more and getting downhill. And once things happen, like, he's going to take what's there. If it's a lob to Jacobson, great. He's going to do that 2 times. And then what happened after that? They stayed with Jacobson, and now Smith's getting a little bit of a layup. I think it was Braden Smith just kind of, like, I'm sure there's more schematics to it that I'm missing, but it really just felt like Smith was just like, okay, I'm done. Like, we're winning this, and I don't really care. Yeah, and I think that's a big part, is Smith being a passer the entire game. Now that opens up the ability for him to score down the stretch. You'd probably like to see a little bit better blend during the game, but also the defense that Corpus Christi was playing leads to Smith being more of a passer. If they're going to put 2 on the ball, that means it's 4 on 3 elsewhere. He was just able to start beating that a little bit down the stretch and start really getting into the paint.
Yeah, and I the one thing that you mentioned that I thought I really saw in that stretch was getting the rebound and then just going and not letting them get set up on the other end. A couple of times he got into the paint before there was really any set up in the half court system. So I thought that was big. I'm not sure why it took until then to really get rolling in that standpoint and attack early. But I thought that definitely changed. Obviously, somebody mentioned a couple of big guys fouled out as we got down the stretch as well. So that obviously made it a little bit easier. But nonetheless, I thought really it was just a change in mindset of how quickly Purdue was going to try to attack.
Yep, I'm with you there. The other guy that from the perimeter that we have to talk about next, as we're getting into some of these individual player breakdowns, is Fletcher Lawyer. 21 points, 6 of 10 shooting, 6 of 7 from the line, 2 assists, 1 turnover, 1 rebound. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be the leading scorer, and he might not even be second, but this has felt so far early in 2 exhibitions and then against A&M Corpus Christi. So I understand the grain of salt and all that stuff, but like, Fletch has at certain times he's looked like just flat out the best player on the floor. And then the other times he's just looked like the best complementary piece possible to Braden Smith, of like, he can just score. He's going to shoot the ball well, and he gets downhill and he attacks. He was creating his own shot. Now, he's not creating off a pick and roll, right, a lot, or he's, going to break guys down in isolation. But, Braden Smith off the pick and roll hedge, skip past the Lawyer. He's attacking closeout, one dribble pull up, sidestep three, getting into the lane. We saw this in spurts last year. And again, this is one game, and Lawyer last year even had that month long where he really struggled. This is the type of Lawyer and type of game where it's just like you almost can't take Lawyer off the floor because he's just that important offensively. If they're putting 2 on the ball on Braden Smith and they're doubling TKR on the post, somebody else has to be able to score. And right now it's Fletcher Lawyer, and it's not even close.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there, and I think it's his ability to attack off the bounce and get into the paint, get in that little mid range, or get all the way to the rim like he did a couple of times. Draws 2 fouls trying to drive to the rim. The other 3 free throws came off of that getting fouled on that 3-point attempt. But he's really the only one right now doing that. I think CJ is that guy also. CJ seemed a little bit timid of just like when to attack and when not to attack today. And some of that may have just been the amped up pressure and being in the first home game situation here. But I think CJ can also be that guy. But right now it is Fletcher. And that's kind of what separates him from a couple of the other guys that are more just catch and shoot threes or 1 or 2 dribble pull up type guys. Is his ability to score at all 3 levels. Is he the most athletic in doing that? No, but he's really high IQ. He knows how to create angles. He knows how to create contact. And he's going to have to do it because one of my biggest questions for this team in general is, when the jump shot goes away, how are they going to manufacture points? If they're forcing the ball out of Braden's hand early and the jump shots aren't falling down like they were in the first half, then how are you going to grind out points? And some of that's got to be TKR. Some of that's hopefully another big man developing, but the guards and wings are going to have to figure out how to score in the mid-range or at the rim somehow when those jump shots aren't getting knocked down.
Yeah, and that's my big thing. I sort of referenced it at halftime of like, hey, Purdue, like if Purdue didn't shoot absolutely lights out, this is like a 5-point game. And it did get to that at one point. 9 of 13 in the first half from 3 covers a lot of holes. And there are going to be moments where this team just does it. Miles Colvin goes 4 for 4. We'll talk about him in a second. Fletcher Lawyer also had 12 points in the first half too. What happens? Like, is it just TKR post-ups? And is it just Braden Smith pick and rolls? What exactly happens when those shots aren't falling? And that's a little bit of what you saw in the second half is they didn't really score well for 13 minutes. And then the final 7, Braden Smith said, okay, fine, I'll just do this. And then TKR, I think, was a little bit more aggressive. And that's where you end up pulling away for a 17-point lead still. But yeah, Lawyer's importance probably wasn't emphasized enough this offseason. I know he was one that was probably pretty heavily scrutinized does he deserve his role and all that? It's only 2 exhibitions in one game, but absolutely right now he is absolutely one of the 3 most important players on this team. One of the other 3 that we haven't talked about from that too much. Well, I threw it to you early for TKR, but I was starting to get stats up and stuff, so I didn't really listen to what you said, to be honest. So TKR, I'm going to talk about him for half a second. 15 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 turnovers, a block, a steal in 33 minutes. He played 18 first half minutes there. You saw a little bit of force, and he had 4 turnovers. I think 2 of them weren't his fault, truthfully. But then what happens when he gets doubled? You saw some nice kickouts, some nice skip passes. There's a couple noted where it's just like he hits the wide open guy, but then there's going to be time, especially the Big Ten games, where length can get to him. But he has to be aggressive. 12 shots total. No free throws from him, I believe, for the entire game, which is shocking. I understand that Corpus Christi was doubling at times, especially in that second half. But I was, especially that second half, I was just wanting TKR to get the ball more and just be like, okay, somebody just needs to be aggressive and just settle down. And he is right. It's not your normal, what's your stereotypical isolation that you think of to create, but TKR essentially can ISO, where it's more of a 15-foot face up into a back down and create from there. It's hard to say be more aggressive when he leads the team in shots, but and leads the team in rebounds. But I just wanted him to be a little more aggressive. I don't know if that's fair or not.
Well, I think some of that's just what we're used to seeing out of our dominant post player in terms of the percentage of shots that they take in any game and their ability to kind of take over when they want to. I love the fact that TKR can face off, he can face up, take people off the dribble, go to that spin move. But man, there's some matchups, and I thought tonight was one of them where he just needs to go, post up. He's the bigger, more physical presence. Take those few dribbles, get to the point where you're backing them down, but just play like a big time post player that you are at that point, and don't worry about, the fancy dribbling and the fancy spin moves. You're just the bigger, more imposing player. Just post up and go.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. That's what I was hoping to see at various points during that second half, and we got a little bit, but again, it's going to take a little bit of time. TKR, we know that he's had the talent to be one of the guys. He still has to learn to be the guy or be the complementary guy to Braden Smith. That still in itself takes a bit of time. It isn't. I think people at times maybe think that, oh, you just up your usage and it's no big deal. Like, that's great. But it takes time to do that. You have to learn to still be able to pick your spots, still be able to get others involved, and then also still just dominate the game. So that was the big three. What they combined for, like, what is it, 46 points, a whole lot of rebounds, some assists, a lot of they're going to be where this team goes. Let's go to Colvin. First half specifically, 14 points, 5 of 6 from the field, 4 of 4 from 3 rebounds. Doesn't get as much take in the second half. Only 5 minutes, was 0 for 3 from 3. Is Colvin's value specifically tied to whether he makes a 3-pointer right now? And if so, do you think that can progress and change throughout the year?
I do think it can, and I do think his ball handling got better from last year to this year. Do you want him as the primary the secondary ball handler out there all the time, especially against a team that really pressures the ball? I don't think so, right? You saw him bring the ball up once against some pressure. He did okay that one time. You saw him get a steal and a breakaway dunk, but that's just not a high level skill set for him. He can do it okay. He can survive, right? With Jakari, with CJ, when they were out there, you would just see the ball get kicked to him and they'd go ahead and bring the ball up. No worries. Sometimes go ahead and go in and initiate the offense. Jakari turned it over one of those times, but again, he's a freshman. He's learning. That is in his wheelhouse. That is in his skill set. And I think the primary reason, honestly, that, if you're asking like why he hit those 4 threes, he got that dunk in the first half, and you're like, oh, okay, like why in the world is he not starting? Is because if he's not hitting shots, is there enough else that he's bringing to the table to go ahead and get that starting spot? Because if we look through that, and first of all, let me say, I thought Miles played great tonight. Absolutely killed it from shooting, finished 4 of 7 from 3, 5 of 9 field goals altogether. Thought he played a really, really nice offensive game. He did get 4 rebounds tonight. I didn't realize he had that many rebounds. I guess it's whether he can do the same things defensively that the other two can, or at some point does just that extra shooting outweigh it. But I think we get lost in this who's the starter conversation, right?
Yeah.
And it's to me, it's just ridiculous because when Miles was hot, you saw him stay in the game. I don't remember exactly what his first half minutes ended up being.
Good thing that we have something that can show it. Colvin had 12-ish first half minutes.
Okay. So outside of Smith, did anybody else play more than 12 minutes in the guard wing spot?
TKR, at the guard and wing spot. Lawyer played 15.
Okay.
And then it was Colvin.
Yeah. So, I mean, when he comes into the game, if he's knocking down shots and he's bringing that value, he's going to get run. Like, simple as that. So, I don't think it matters whether he's starting or whether he's not starting. When he's got that value, he's going to get run. Painter's going to leave him in the game, and that's what he did in the first half. Second half, I think he takes 3 more threes in that second half. None of those 3 go down. At that time, wasn't really finding a way to impact the game in other ways. So he goes back to the bench and they bring somebody in that's bringing values in that way. But I think we get so hung up on this, who starts, who doesn't start. It's who gets run in the game. Simple as that.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, because I agree with you, is because I think at times, especially if Colvin continues this hot streak, like there will be push for him to start. I think, and maybe I'm not estimating the fan base correctly, but I think a lot of them would just assume he starts over Harris. To me, he would start over Lawyer. Like that's where the skill set overlaps. And Lawyer has started every game. There's Painter's talked about many times. Like some guys are just you get into the role of starter or bench, and like you said, maybe they don't play those minutes accordingly, but that specific role they're just more comfortable. And now Colvin, when he comes off the bench, he can be like just this sharpshooter and just let it fly and potentially pick up defensively. Now we did see Lawyer and Colvin together. I'm not saying that lineup can't work at all. We saw it a lot and it worked pretty well in the first half, but I don't think you want to start there. I think it's something that today is the perfect example of where you don't start there. You start with the more defense and ball handling with Harris, or if Cox ever overtakes him, one of those two. And now Colvin can come in if he's playing really well, has the super hot hands. Yeah, he can play 30 minutes. Like it is very possible. Same thing with the bigs. I think that's going to be a story of like, I would expect Jacobson to keep starting until like something drastic happens, but that doesn't mean he's going to probably play starter minutes every single game. So no, I think that's a good call out there from you. Moving to CJ and Jakari Harris, let's just lump them together. For Harris, Harris had 5 points, 2 of 5 shooting, 1 of 4 from 3, an assist, a rebound, no blocks or steals, but had like 2 or 3 like where basically he forced a turnover. CJ Cox, 3 points, 1 of 1 shooting from 3, 2 rebounds, an assist, and a steal in 11 minutes. I'm going to go first here. Is like I kind of said it off the top, but you saw the flashes, and aside from that late game stretch, and maybe even one of the Harris plays was in it. Like the loudest Mackey got tonight was when CJ Cox ripped a dude in the backcourt and Jakari Harris ripped a dude in the backcourt, and they force jump balls and they navigate screens and force turnovers. Like that was the loudest Mackey was tonight. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean that in a good way of like, one, Purdue fans appreciate what they're doing, and 2, they just got it to them. Like CJ Cox, Jakari Harris, they just have that to them where they can be good defenders. And this is I'm going to allow myself to briefly look ahead in 2 years when they're presumably the starting backcourt. Good luck finding a better defensive backcourt, maybe in the country at that point, than those two. And that'll be fun to watch. That's not for now, though. You saw what Jakari finally knocked one down. The shooting's probably going to be a bit of an up and down thing. I still think he has it in him to be, I think he's going to be streaky. I think he has it in him to be a good shooter at times, but he's not going to be, crazy high efficiency. CJ Cox, I don't know if he ever misses a jumper. I keep expecting him to miss and he just doesn't. So it's like, okay. We talked about they're freshmen and they made mistakes. I think you saw both off ball lose it a bit. And they have to be better at that. They're part of this, and then they have to improve there too. But overall, just really impressed with, again, what they're able to bring. And there's a reason that they played 34 combined minutes tonight. It's probably going to hover around that all season, and there's a reason.
Yeah, for sure. And I put in my notes, like, credit to Jakari for being confident enough to take that 3 late in the game. I don't remember if we were up by 7 at that point. I think maybe and it pushed it to 10, if I remember right. But a lot of freshmen who'd had the shooting night that he'd had so far don't take that, because he totally airballed the one right before that from the corner. So, I mean, credit to him for having the confidence to go ahead and take it and just absolutely drilling it. We've seen, I think, at times in the exhibition games and practices, yeah, it's a little streaky. Something he's going to work on. Sure, it's going to get better. He does a lot of other things well, though. Like you said, the defensive pressure he applies, his ball handling, taking some pressure off of Braden in that regard. Had a couple mistakes offensively with passes, one specifically late where he just kind of lazily tried to toss it into TKR. They tip it and steal and go the other way. But those things are going to get worked out in time. Does he need to be better than he was tonight? Yeah. Do we think he's going to get a lot better with more reps? Yeah. And I think he's going to get a lot more comfortable shooting to at least be, a 33% type shooter from the 3-point line, maybe a little bit better, just depending on how comfortable he gets. I do want to see some minutes with Braden, CJ, and Fletch all on the court. I think there were some minutes tonight. I guess I just go ahead.
None with all three of those. There was Braden, CJ, Colvin, it looks like.
Yeah. I would like to see what the team looks like with CJ out there in that starting lineup, not necessarily as a starter, but with that starting lineup, just to see, because right now he's got a little bit more to his game in terms of being able to attack and hit that mid-range jumper. Like I said, just doesn't feel like he's ever going to miss. And from what we've seen so far, to me, he looks just as good defensively as what Harris does out there at this point. I think I don't know if did he finish with 2 steals or 1 tonight?
I think 1.
Okay.
But
he had the tie.
They both had play.
Yeah.
They both had plays where it's like, it's not technically a steal, but it basically is.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, I'd be interested in that. I still really wonder, and we didn't get to see it tonight because CJ just takes that one shot, but I still really wonder if in Painter's head, he provides scoring punch in a different way than Miles provides it coming off the bench, and that they need that in the second wave. So they have a shot creator out there. I don't know. It would be interesting to ask Painter that question a little bit later in the season as we see this progress and see how it plays out. But yeah, I think we saw some freshman mistakes tonight, and you saw flashes of what makes us both very hopeful of what they can be as the season progresses.
They're good. They're good. There's going to be mistakes, but man, are they good? And I am very, very excited. Like, it was where this offseason when I watched them both, and I was just like, yeah, like these guys are good. And I didn't want to let myself get too over like ambitious with them, and also at that point thinking like there's just not minutes for really consistently both of them. There's going to be absolutely consistent minutes for both of them. And I think the point with CJ Cox brings scoring punch off the bench, I think that's a big reason probably why for now Harris is starting, where Harris is the 4th or 5th option offensively. And when CJ's in, he can be sort of that 2nd and 3rd. And I think you like that. I'm still going to stick with like, I think Harris can guard a little bit more physical guards for now. And like, not that CJ can't. I still think there's some of that upside where it's like, if Harris gets switched onto bigger guys, you trust him a little bit more. But yeah, I also wouldn't be shocked if in a game or two CJ starting over Harris. Like they're neck and neck, and it's a very, very good problem to have, in my opinion. I think the only other player, because we went through the bigs, we went through the big 3.
We haven't talked about Cam yet.
Yeah, that's the only guy we haven't talked about. Cam Heide. 0 points, 0 for 2 from 3, 3 rebounds, a block in 10 minutes of play. I said in the exhibition, or after the last, who do they play? Whoever they played in their last exhibition. That's really bugging me. I can't remember that. I've said I'm not worried about Heide until he starts passing up open shots. I don't actually care about the 0 for 2 from 3. I think he's a good enough shooter. Maybe he's not a 45% three-point shooter, but I still think he's a 37, 38 guy. So like the 0 for 2 itself, I don't actually care about whatsoever. It's that he should have had 5 or 6 shots today. He had the opportunity and just passed. And that's what's scary. Thank you, Alex Rockhold, Grand Valley State. That's who they played in their last exhibition. That was what worried me. And it was, you saw him get up 2 in the second half. I don't think he attempted 1 in the first. And those were the ones that he passed up. So maybe it is starting to get into like, okay, Cam's like, yeah, no, I got to shoot the ball. And yeah, offensively, like he just has to be a catch and shoot guy and attack downhill. Like he's not going to be breaking people down or anything off the dribble, but one dribble and just rise up over people because he can finish at the rim. That's going to be important. I will say, I thought Heide was, outside of Harrison Cox, I thought he was the best perimeter defender tonight. I really liked what he did defensively out there. I like the scheme that they can run with him, with really even being more aggressive, use his size to cause issues. And I think that's probably going to get overlooked with Heide because the offensive stuff was just so blatant. But I think he still brought value in that, or really defensively. I thought he was very good on that end. He's just got to shoot the ball. He's got to have confidence. And maybe it's still him adjusting, but it's definitely something I'm monitoring.
Yeah, and I mean, 2 of those shots that he passed up were literally almost back to back. Like he passed up a 3, he passes it, skips around a little bit, comes right back to him. He passes up a 3 again, like just kind of almost back to back. And I think he'd taken 1 at that point, or maybe not any at that point. I think he's just trying to figure out how he fits with this team offensively now, because as of right now, those wide open kickouts aren't there from Zach Edey when he gets doubled. Now, TKR was getting doubled some tonight. You could still see some kickouts like that for Cam. Off of that, if that continues in other games, it's something I think you said TKR did have a couple of good skip passes. I thought there was times when he got doubled where he couldn't really turn face and throw over it near as quickly or easily as what Zach did, obviously, just because there's a massive size difference there. But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But if it's going to get kicked out to him, he's got to take it when he's open. And he was open a couple of times and just passed up on it. I don't know that the same driving lanes are going to be there for him to attack like he did last year. Most of those were just attacking a closeout when somebody was coming late, though, off of those kickouts. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a work in progress of just how does he fit. Where I really thought you'd see him flash this year is I thought this team would get out and transition and run a lot more. I don't know through 3 games do you feel like we're getting out and running more? Because it doesn't feel like it to me necessarily than what we did last year.
Like a little bit. It's not probably as big of a leap that I was anticipating, though.
Right. So I think he's just got to figure out where his value is going to be. I saw somebody else put in the chat that if he's going to get minutes out there, he's got to be crashing the board. And I think that's a really big thing because this team, somebody else in the chat earlier posted the question about how is this team going to rebound against Big Ten teams? And it's going to have to be by committee. Guards, wings, they're going to have to help this year for us to maintain a rebounding advantage or at least be on par with other teams. And if Cam's going to play minutes at the 4, he's got to have a big role in that. You saw him crash a couple of times. One time he gets the rebound. The other time, it kind of bats around and goes back and forth. He had his hands on it and somebody else got it. But he's got to figure out a way to carve out his role and be impactful in that manner for me.
Yep, and that's going to be the thing. And I'm not going to crazy overreact to the sample size that we've seen. But if it's still looking like this, game 5, game 10, game 12, like that's when I definitely will have more concern. And just because I think he can still be good, like I still go back to like if he could maybe not shoot the ball quite as well, but if he can be close to like a more athletic Mason Gillis, I think that role is in his range of outcomes. And if he can be that's a fantastic player for Purdue to have, especially because he could actually play the 3. But yeah, he's just got to show it and he's got to be confident. And we'll just kind of see what happens there. I think we've gone through all the players. We've done a little bit of overview with the defensive side of the ball. I wanted to point out, so I think they had a 22.2% turnover percentage. So turnover on basically 22% of their possessions. That would have been their 5th worst compared to last season. Not the best start there, obviously. You also, I think, just saw more pick and roll. Let's see, what is the exact numbers? I have them here. 37 pick and rolls for Purdue, that includes kickouts, 1.027 points per possession. So shooting the ball well, did really well against the hedge when teams hedge, but this offense is going to feature a lot of pick and rolls. It says only 5 post-ups, and if I was to guess, I would have guessed like 7. Not a lot of post-ups, a lot of pick and rolls. That's kind of what this team is going to more look like. We talked about maybe TKR being a little bit more aggressive, but is there anything else you want to hit on? Anybody you want to shout out? Any major takeaway or thing you're curious about coming up as Purdue plays again this upcoming Friday?
I mean, I think we got to at least mention the free throw shooting.
Oh,
now,
true.
So on the day we end up free throw shooting percentage as a team 63%. It's been a concern so far this year. Tonight, it was really just one guy, though, right? If you take out Berg going 1 for 6, they end up like 76% on the day. I think that's part of what makes the decision really hard for Painter on the big men and why Jacobson probably starts, because the style that Berg's going to play is going to be a physical brand of basketball, and he's going to get fouled a lot. but he's got to be able to convert if he goes to the line. Last year in kind of scrap minutes, he shoots 46% on the year last year. This year so far, it hasn't looked a whole lot better. I think that's something he's just got to get better at if he's going to find significant minutes on the floor.
Yep, I got nothing really to add there. He's got to be better. It was good to see the rest of them knock down free throws. Lawyer 6 of 7, Smith 5 of 6, Jacobson 5 of 7, which is big. That's also going to help him get minutes. But yeah, good shout out on the free throw shooting. 9 of 13 from 3 in the first half is still just wild. But then they followed up with 2 of 13 to probably average out like 11 of 26 is probably still, it's going to be above what they shoot for the year by a bit. But like, I think the other main takeaway I had is like, will this offense put up 90 every single night? No. And against Big Ten defenses, it's not going to happen every night. But like, any concern that the offense would just fall apart without Zach Edey is gone. I think you saw Braden Smith really be able to dissect the defense. You saw TKR be able to take over. And you saw, most importantly, Purdue just continually get really good shots from 3. And the variance in make miss was evidenced by very clearly the halves that were played. But let's see, 22 catch and shoot jumpers for Purdue, 13 of them open, 9 contested. That's a good rate. That's probably pretty close to what they were last year. This team is still going to generate good looks, more possessions than not, especially on the possessions they don't actually turn the ball over. But yeah, I think that's just going to be like I'm very happy to see where it is. We have some questions. We'll roll through those and then we'll get out of here. David Dillman, any thoughts on if the 5 may vary with matchups later on, or is it too early to tell? I think we kind of hit on this throughout of like, we think probably, or at least I think Jacobson starts for foreseeable future, but on any given night, it could be Berg. I still think there's room for first. And then Burgess is the wild card to me of like, if he just starts putting it together, then like he just might be the dude that gets 20 minutes and we'll just kind of see. So too early to tell basically because nobody stood out, I guess is my answer. I don't know if you have any. Yeah. Jeff Parks, just my
exactly.
Just my opinion, but I think the rotation at the 5 will be Jacobson with the first off the bench, and then Berg if they get into foul trouble. Any thoughts? Kind of same vein. I think there is upside for first. There's also potential that Burgess could just kind of take those minutes if he's able to get there. I guess I'm not crazy confident in that, but like I think it's in the range of outcomes, and I guess it's kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's basically not a real answer, but it's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. And I think anybody that tells you they have the answer at the 5 and what's going to happen, looking in a crystal ball down the road is selling some snake oil there. Cause I just don't think any of us have seen enough, out of any one player at that position to have a good idea. I think for all 4 of them, if they grow in a certain area significantly between now and January, you could see them really take a whole lot of minutes at that position. But I don't think there's any way to know that's what's going to happen right now.
Yep, 100%. So from SLK Boiler, what I liked is that Braden never looked scared, never looked shaken. Same with Lawyer. They were the leaders we needed. Any thoughts on that?
I mostly agree. I mostly agree. I thought there was still some forcing. A couple of times, maybe when the game started to separate, maybe not so much forcing, is trying for just too much instead of taking the easy pass that was there. But I agree with you in essence. I just think there's still things that can be cleaned up.
I think the mentality though was there, and maybe the plays weren't executed perfectly, but the mentality was there, which is what they need. And that's, I think, what he was referencing. Corey Lesney, how is this team going to rebound in the Big Ten? That's my biggest concern. I think it got better throughout the game. I think you saw Jacobson. He started, especially in that second half, really battling and getting, I guess he had more boards in the first half. I thought he was just more aggressive in the second half. You saw TKR a little bit more in the second half. They had 20 rebounds in the first, 19 in the second. In terms of their offensive rebounding percentage and defensive rebounding percentage, offensive rebounding definitely way down from last year. It would have been out of basically 40 games, it would have been like their 25th best-ish. And then defensive rebounding would have been. There's no way that's right. Defensive rebounding, that would have been their best game by far. If I'm looking at the stats correctly. No, okay. I was looking at it.
Okay.
I was about to say, I was like, that doesn't quite make sense. Yeah, defensive, again, a little bit below average, I think, again. And it is going to be a concern. You're going to, when Heidi's in, he has to crash. TKR has to be aggressive on the boards. And you just need it out of the bigs. Whoever it is, I think Jacobson has the upside. Berg has the upside. Even First, I think, has it. Really, all of them. I'll throw Burgess in there too. But again, it kind of has to continue to be there and be good throughout the game.
Yeah, it's got to be a team effort. I think, especially this year. Like I referenced this question just a little bit ago and kind of gave my answer already, but not going to be able to rely on one guy to get a very, very, very high percentage.
Yeah, I mean, they still won the rebounding battle today, but definitely something to monitor. We'll go to Jeff Parks first. 2 exhibitions and the opener, and we're averaging 92 a game. Offensively, we'll be very solid this year. As these youngsters improve defensively for Purdue, we'll be in the fight for the three-peat. I think we all kind of agree with that. We expect the defense to get better. It's just going to take some time. Brian Bennett, we take for granted how special a night at Mackey is, no matter when in the season it happens. Shout out the crowd. It got really loud in here. It got very, very loud in here. I think it was full by the time tip happened or shortly after tip. Definitely with a 6 o'clock game, a little bit tougher to get early, but yeah, the crowd's electric. Corey Lesney, how did Gills do tonight for Duke? I think somebody said he had 10-3-3. I just wanted to because I meant to bring this up in one of the exhibitions. I don't know if this is a hot take or anything. I'm really glad he ended up at Duke. Like, obviously, knowing that there was no scenario he could come back to Purdue, just based on how Purdue was running their system and recruiting and all that. I'm really glad he ended up at Duke. He's going to, in theory, be able to go compete for a championship. He's going to be on a team that's going to be able to use him properly. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but it was something I wanted to point out. Like, I'm happy he ended up there. I don't know if people agree or not. I don't know.
I think by and large, Purdue fandom is happy for him that he ended up landing in a good spot. We know the way they do it here. They have to give their answer going into the season. He had a really good year last year and he made himself some money. I'm sure he got a decent NIL package to go over there. You see him contributing. Some of the films and stuff that they've released, you can tell he's obviously one of the leaders in the locker room there. Finishes 4-6, 2 of 4, 10 rebounds, or I'm sorry, 10 points, 3 rebounds, 3 steals tonight for him. I got nothing but love for the man. Hope he goes out there and does extremely well, and they go a long way. Be the only time in my history of my life that I will root for Duke in an NCAA tournament.
Yep. So that was, yeah, I'm happy for him. I'm excited. Last one, Linda Jackson. My mom says, "Happy birthday, Joe." I appreciate that. I appreciate I saw a lot of comments wishing me happy birthday. So I do appreciate that. When I realized what day the season started on, this was like pretty much right after the previous season ended. I was like, oh, that's gonna be pretty cool. It starts on my birthday. Got to see the Final Four banner unveiled. I guess that's the one thing we didn't touch on. Final Four banner unveiled. Just very cool to see kind of the cap on what was a magical run last year. I saw somebody early said Edey was dominating kind of in the first quarter, and we're very excited to see him, Jay and Ivy. And obviously there's a plethora of guys playing overseas too. So obviously we are on to this year, but it is still just going to be fun and cool to be able to reflect on that run, today, 5 years from now, a decade from now, because it really was fun. And I know I had a blast, and I think I speak for everybody. It was just an absolute great time covering that team.
Yeah, I just, when that banner got unveiled, and if you follow our Twitter, we did post video of that banner getting unveiled. I think Joe's got it uploaded as a short on YouTube as well. And whatever. People who are like, oh, they didn't actually win the championship. If you're watching the show, you're not a Purdue fan, you want to poke fun about it, I don't really care. When that banner came down, just kind of looking up and thinking like, oh yeah, like we really got to experience that last year. We got to ride along and watch the team all year. We got to go out to Phoenix, sit in press seats at the Final Four and watch that team. just a special, special moment, something I'll never forget. So it was great to watch the crowd react. Probably, honestly, one of the loudest cheers of the night. The crowd was good, but it was just really, really loud when that banner got unveiled.
Yep, 100%. Boiler Fanatics, any quick thoughts for the next opponent in the game? We will have a preview. Short, I don't know if it's tomorrow or Wednesday. We'll have a preview out covering Purdue's next opponent, which is going to be Northern Kentucky. I'm still figuring out this early conference schedule. Another team that's probably going to be a tough opponent, and they play Florida State today. We'll see. I don't know if that game already finished or not, but that'll be out soon. Last thing, we'll get out of here. You had made a face. Was that like a reaction to the comments, or did something happen?
No, we're 8:09 into the third, and Zach is 5 of 6, 1 of 1 from 3 with 8 rebounds and 11 points today.
Hey, the man might be pretty good at basketball. Ulamog, TFIAMDO, be upset at a 17-point win. For everybody for people that know what that is, you understand. If not, it's basically, what are you going to do? Be upset about a 17-point win? And there's things to critique, but at the end of the day, trust paints, and that's just kind of what's going to happen. And this team's probably going to end up still being pretty good, and it's going to be fun watching them throughout the season. So appreciate everybody tuning in. If you are still here, like and subscribe on YouTube. Turn on bell notifications. You'll get notified immediately when we go live. Some games it's going to be right after. Away games, it'll be basically right after. Home games, it's going to just kind of depend on circumstances, whether we go live right away or a few minutes after. Also, our pregame shows, like those are going to be posted throughout the week. Bell notifications, subscribe. You'll get notified every single time that we go live. You can follow Craig on Twitter at CraigBowers34, me at Joe Jackson CBB, and we will be back sometime this week for a preview show, which will be posted, but then also Friday after the game when Purdue does take on Northern Kentucky. That is, I believe, a 7 o'clock tip. 7 o'clock Eastern time. It is on Big Ten Plus, one of the couple games that I think is this year. So if you need to get that set up for Friday, 7 Eastern, we'll be live after the show. Appreciate, again, everybody tuning in, and we will all catch you Friday.